Sound check 1 2 3 4.
Ses prova, ses deneme.
Ah, oh no.
Zahra, can you hear me? Zahra?
Shadi, hi, good morning.
Hi.
Okay, so I guess I'm audible.
Hi, Steve Miles. Steve Miles calling in.
Oh, hi, David.
Hi.
Okay, we can see now. Carla, are you hearing me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah.
Hello?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Great.
We can hear you, Carla.
Ciao, Angela. How are you?
Carla, everybody can hear you. So,
Good morning, everyone. We're just going to give it a few minutes. We're still waiting on one of our primary panelists. Good morning, everyone. We'll get started, if that's all right. I want to welcome you to the first IGF Best Practices Forum on Child Online Protection. My name is Jacqueline Boucher, and I'm the Chief Online Safety Officer at Microsoft Corporation based in Redmond, Washington in the US. My co-chair for this forum and co-facilitator is Hannah Broadbent from ChildNet International in the UK, and we have a third member of our team, Carla Licciardello from the ITU. She's joining us today as a remote participant. By way of a brief background and a level set for everyone, the work of the Best Practices Forum has been in process for the past several weeks. The IGF is experimenting with this format in an effort to achieve more tangible outcomes from such sessions now and in the future. So you may have been asked to participate early on in the process by responding to 8 sort of general questions or items about child online protection. Know that these were the same items that were asked from the 5 different best practices forums. Responses were then culled into a draft document by our consulting scholar. This is John Laprice. John can acknowledge himself here on the corner. And our goal in the next 90 minutes is sort of to recap, by way of some examples, what we've learned to date from that process. And we want to gather further inputs so that John can prepare the next draft of that report. We will hear this morning from 5 more formal discussants. We have someone representing a global view, we have someone representing a more regional and country-specific view, and we're very privileged to have 3 youth with us here this morning as well. We're then going to call on you, the audience, a couple of times during this interaction, and we'd like very much to hear your interventions on what is going on in terms of best practices in your organizations or your regions. We definitely know that there's a lot of very interesting and very compelling work going on, so we want as many examples as possible to feed into this process. After we have your interventions and your contributions, we'll then open the floor to formal questions for either the panelists or just amongst the group in general. And then we're going to reserve some time at the end for some feedback about the process in general. And that is because we know that this leading up to IGF took place at a time that is obviously dedicated to holidays and travel, and there was a quick turnaround time for the formal submissions. So there's still time to do so. If you would like to present a formal submission, we're still able to take those, and John will include them in the next draft of the report. Later this afternoon, the co-chairs of all the best practices forums will report out to the main session. And just to reiterate, again, this format is a trial balloon for the IGF of sorts. So we definitely need your feedback, we need your input to be able to improve upon it and to advance it going forward. So without further ado, we'll have Hannah introduce our first panelist.
Thanks, Jacqueline. We're delighted to be here from ChildNet. I'm the Director of Policy at ChildNet International. We're a children's charity in the UK. Our aim is to make the internet a great and safe place. So we do education and awareness work and also work in the policy space, both within schools and industry. A key part of this is involving young people in our work and every area of our work. And we're here today with a group of young people. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first panelist, Susie Hargreaves, the Chief Executive of the Internet Watch Foundation.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline and Hannah, and thanks very much for inviting me today to speak. So I'm going to try and give a global perspective to the issue. I'm Chief Exec of the Internet Watch Foundation, which is the UK hotline for reporting child sexual abuse content. And in terms of child sexual abuse content globally, we're part of a network of hotlines called In Hope. So we work very closely globally with other hotlines around the world. We're also a member of the UK Safer Internet Centre with ChildNet and with Southwest Grid for Learning. I'm not really going to talk about the IWF today, but I'm going to talk about the work we do as a member of the COP initiative for ITU. So one of the things we need to acknowledge is that protecting children online is a global issue. And it brings with it many, many challenges. And I think that's one thing which this forum is trying to do, but it's also one thing that's being done very successfully so far by ITU through the COP initiative. So the Child Online Protection Initiative of ITU has identified 5 areas that need to be addressed on a global basis, on a country-by-country basis. So the legal measures in place, obviously some of the key issues are that legislation is different in every single country. In fact, child sexual abuse is probably one of the areas where legislation is really very sort of standardized across the world, which means we can take action on content hosted anywhere in the world. They also identify that we need to have standardization in technical and procedural measures, that organizational structures need to be addressed. Capacity building is an issue, and of course we need international cooperation. And one of the things I want to sort of bring your attention to is that the COP initiative, of whom many people in this room actually will be members, because it's a multi-stakeholder group and it brings in people from all different sectors. So I know that I've been involved in it and many people around this table have. And they have 4 guidelines which are really useful. So if you haven't come across these, you really should. One is for children, one is for parents and educators, one is for industry, and the final one is for policymakers. And I think we really need to make sure that the work of the COP initiative isn't just replicated in this forum, because it's really important that we build on what has gone before. The other document I wanted to bring your attention to is a UNODC document, which is on the study of the effects of new information technologies and the abuse and exploitation of children. And I think this really brings together some incredible world research and thinking at the moment. So again, this is a great document. It's available online on UNODC, a United Nations document. So again, looking at these 2 pieces of work that have been going on hand in hand, I think it's really important that we then build on those. So that's where I think we are. I think those are the issues that ITU's already framed them, and I'm very happy to sort of expand on that later on. Thank you.
Contribution, Susie. Now I'd like to go over to Patrick Burton, who's the Executive Director of the Centre for Justice and Crime Prevention in South Africa.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you again for the invitation to speak here. So perhaps I should just start by explaining a little bit about the centre that I work with. The Centre for Justice and Crime Prevention is a not-for-profit organisation based in Cape Town, working throughout South Africa, and we do have a bit of a regional footprint as well. We weren't established and we weren't initially set up to look at online issues, but we were really set up to look at violence prevention more generally, with a very strong focus on children and youth. And I think through the work that we were doing around 2007, 2008, and particularly work we were doing around school-based violence, cyberbullying in particular started to emerge as just another form of violence that children were facing in South Africa. And up to that point, there was almost no research that was being done on the subject. And so we picked it up with a lot of the other work that we were doing. We've obviously just now become much more immersed in the conversation in South Africa, and we're working quite closely with various government departments, the Department of Communication, Department of Basic Education, Social Development in South Africa on various strategies, various approaches. So that's really where I'm coming from in terms of my broad comments. I think perhaps because of the approach that we take as an organization towards child safety more generally, we approach child online protection in sort of one of 2 ways. The first is looking at how we equip children and young people with the skills and the efficacy and using their sense of agency to deal with this adverse situations that they might face online. So that's the one aspect of it. But the other is then looking at mitigating adverse threats, inappropriate behavior, inappropriate content that exists online. And making sure that when children do come across instances where they are being cyberbullied, when they come across inappropriate material online, that there's appropriate response mechanisms in place. And that leads quite nicely to, I think, a broad categorization of how, I don't want to speak on behalf of the South African government, I'm an NGO, so let me just put that on the table now, but I think generally within South Africa, from a civil society perspective, academic and policy making level, we're approaching child online protection one of 3 ways, or so there are 3 areas. The first is prevention, and it's looking at preventing or looking at the content that is available online, looking at things like safety, privacy, screening measures that are in place online or that need to be in place online, looking at from a prevention perspective, also looking at building resilience amongst kids and helping them cope with risks online. So that's how people are generally approaching prevention in South Africa. The second area is looking at response. And this is one of the major gaps that I think people are now encountering online, because even though government is taking steps to, and they're members of the COP initiative, the ITU COP initiative, and they're developing policies child empowerment and online safety policies. But at the moment, in terms of response and the response of NGOs and the response of the justice system, the National Prosecuting Authority, the police, there's a huge gap in how cases are handled and what the systemic and the systematic responses to child online safety issues. And I think at the moment it's quite an interesting space in South Africa because we're fortunate enough to have some of the most progressive policies, child protection policies and legislation in the world, without doubt, that are very well grounded in restorative justice principles, on keeping children out of contact with the criminal justice system where appropriate. But unfortunately, that also somehow, at times now, when it comes to online issues, is actually counting against what's in the best interest of the child. Because we're seeing cases where 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds who are sexting, who are sending photos consensually to partners of the same age are being criminalized, are being prosecuted under the justice system, but to the point that there's some cases where their names are actually being placed on a national sex offenders register, which is certainly not the route that we want to be taking in South Africa in terms of what is in the best interest of the child. And then I guess it's around, the third area is around the development of appropriate policies. And the government has been quite proactive in this. They're looking at how they're building online protection into, for example, school safety strategies, education policies, as well as broader policies that fall under our Department of Communications, which has just been renamed. But so in terms of sort of beyond these areas, sort of good practice and promising practice, unfortunately, because we have so little research in South Africa to date, and we're only starting to develop momentum, there's very little evidence for which we can actually identify good practice. And we're only now starting to develop the sort of baselines that we need to in order to identify what is good practice, what is, I don't want to use the word best practice. But certainly there are some early indications that where the focus has been on integrating safety strategies into other curriculum for children, where there have been initiatives that focus on improving communication between parents and children, we're starting to see good effects. But without a doubt, there's this big gap in terms of being able to identify what is actually good practice. Luckily, I think government has recognized this, and certainly the research institutions have recognized this, and they're starting to put much more attention on developing sound, rigorous research base on which we can actually start identifying what is good practice. And I think I'll leave it there for now.
And it is definitely difficult to decide what is a good practice and what is actually working, and hopefully the young people that are here today can shed light on some of the things that they feel have worked well in their school communities and in their families. I'd like to introduce Eleanor Lee, Harriet Kempson and Zach De Silva. They're all 15 years old from the UK, and they're going to share their perspectives on the things that they feel have been best practices in their school community.
Thank you, Hannah. We are three young people from England, as Hannah said, and we're here with her organisation ChildNet and their IGF youth project. We're bringing our experiences and our friends' experiences to this discussion today.
Through our discussions, we found there are three main risks. These are social aspects like cyberbullying, explicit content, and protection from data from our contacts and from our companies.
There have been many things done to support and promote child safety, but obviously this is only the beginning, and we will continue to surge and push forth into new frontiers of child protection, focusing on industry, schools, and parents. Bring it back over to Eleanor to talk about industry.
So we've found that industries are great. They're doing all these filters to block bad sites, and industries such as the IWF filter out bad sites and block children from going on those sites. However, this doesn't filter out abusive language on social media, and we found through experience that children don't actively go searching for these abusive sites. It comes to them through social media and those type of industries and companies. So we'd like to promote blocking tools on social networking, Because when you are in that pressurized and difficult situation where you are being abused online, it's very difficult to find those reporting buttons and those blocking tools to create it so people cannot see those abusive language and that children are more confident in what they're saying online. This is definitely also for other companies. Privacy settings nowadays are very difficult to find. Sometimes it's very long processes. And for children in that situation where maybe they don't have that knowledge, that technical knowledge to find those pages, it's very, especially in contexts where they are being pressurized because of that abusive online language, it's very important that we make sure those reporting buttons and those blocking tools are very prominent for them. So that's why I believe this is something we should focus on in industries. I'd like to pass on to Zach to talk about schools.
In schools, I feel as there's one big point that we should really be focusing on, and that's more centered around educating children earlier on about the internet and the risks and how to really be safe online. I feel the best way to do this is to focus on varied teaching methods, because sometimes when you have children sitting in front and just looking at an assembly and just someone coming in and speaking to them, they don't quite really take all the information in that they should be. Instead of people telling them, don't do this, maybe make more of an interactive presentation and maybe sharing anecdotes, stories, and things that have actually happened to people, and that may actually kind of go and help them. Schools are doing a lot of good things, actually. Some of the things that they actually do are like blocking games, ads, and social media sites in school, in classes like IT and other classes like history, where you may do a lot of research online during the school hours. But obviously kids are very curious and they like to go through and try find all these different things online, like games and stuff in school. So I think maybe focusing on trying to see if we can come from another angle to try shut that down so we can really focus and promote our education in school. Obviously there's also sometimes I find in schools that the filtering and blocking can get a bit too specific and a bit too much, because I feel as if there are some things in school now, personally from my school, we have our personal emails and YouTube blocked in schools, and I feel as if having personal emails in schools like Google, where we can actually pull up our documents and we can have the Google Drive and share things in school, and then also use YouTube for educational purposes, such as looking up videos that may be specific that we may need to kind of help us in many different aspects in school. So I feel as if maybe getting those out there and then maybe not being too harsh on those, but more focusing on filtering the correct items instead of other things. But that's mostly about school, so now we can move over to Harriet to talk more about another issue, which is parents.
As Zach said, I'm going to approach the issue from the side of what parents and families could do to try to ensure that young people are safe. And I think that in some ways this is one of the most important groups of people. And I don't just mean parents, I mean any trusted adult, so maybe aunts or family friends or even teachers sometimes, depending on the relationships. So there are three main things I think that the parent group of people could do. And they are discussing trust and the technology side of it. I think it's very important that children have this kind of family, responsible adult who they feel confident to talk to, and to talk to a lot. And this promotes the trust. But for example, if my parents, they set up my Facebook and email account with me, and they went through all the privacy settings so that they knew and I knew how to use them, and they knew that I was keeping safe. So I think this sort of discussing and doing things on the internet together, especially with the social media, means that there's a stronger understanding between the two. And then I now feel safe to go to my parents if I need help with something. And this is the trust which I was talking about. The two-way discussion brings the trust, and this trust goes both ways. so that they aren't constantly looking on your Facebook page, checking your phone every day. But if they feel something might not be going quite right, my parents will ask me if they can look through my Facebook page with me. And then it's the two-way trust going that way. And with the discussions and the trust, it means that the adult figure can tailor their actions and change how they are monitoring the child to suit them, because we're all so different. Some people at my age know loads about technology and everything, and some people don't know so much. So it's important to know each other very well. The third point for parents is the use of technology. There are loads of brilliant security software and parent control software which are excellent to use. I know for one in my family, my parents aren't very good at uploading them. So they always get me and my sister to help them. So these software, when they're finally uploaded onto the computer, which can take a while, these can be really useful in blocking some of the sites which are like adult rated and help young people stay safe. So in conclusion, we think that the internet could be made a better and safer place, especially for young people, if these three groups of people and everyone else work together and make these are just some ideas we think could help. So we think industries and organizations such as the IWF do fantastic work in taking down this content. And then for schools, companies or organizations like ChildNet do brilliant work in going around schools and educating them and running sessions. So there are so many things which already happen, but it's just making them more interesting for young people so that it is more absorbed and working together to get these final things done. Thanks.
Thank you very much to the young people and to all of the panelists. I believe Susie just wanted to weigh in. Definitely there's a lot of issues, there's a lot of threads of issues under this broad umbrella of child online protection, and she wants to make sure that we're keeping the illegal material and content definitely separate from some of the other issues that surface. So, Susie.
Okay, yeah, I just think it's really important to clarify for the discussion that often the issues around access to or blocking criminal content and access to inappropriate content, the issues are conflated, and that's not particularly useful. So I just wanted to really clarify that from what I do and my company does, my organization, is we block criminal content. This is content that nobody should ever see. Nobody's allowed to see it. It's illegal, okay? And that's a completely different thing to putting on parental filters and actually looking at ways in which young people don't have access to inappropriate content. So, for instance, we don't block legal pornography. Okay, so, you know, it's important to separate the two, and often, in fact, what happens, because it's quite useful in the UK, is politicians like to conflate the two. And we have spent quite a lot of time saying, no, this is very different. And in terms of, there's been an awful lot of activity in the UK over the last 2 years, and I think we're probably in a different position to many countries because there's been so much focus on this issue, and it's been taken up at the highest level by the Prime Minister. So we have a number of huge initiatives in the UK which haven't been replicated around the world, which I'm sure John and other people will talk about later, including parental filters, which are on, which all the 4 ISPs are implementing on all devices. If you buy a new device now, you have parental filters on, so you have to actually then, you have a whole series of questions that you have to answer about whether you want the filters on or off, but they're actually going to be on all of them to begin with, and that's very different to other countries around the world. So just gone a bit off tangent there, but basically let's separate the criminal from the inappropriate. Thank you.
So we'd like to open it up to the floor. Certainly, I know we're going to have lots of participation, and that's great. We definitely want to open it up at this point for continued interventions about best practices, how you're framing the issue, and so forth. A lot of the questions that were brought up in the initial question set. So, Larry, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to do something that is normally considered risky, and I'll tell you in a minute why you would consider it risky. But first, I want to say thank you to Hannah for bringing over these extraordinary young people and also for helping to organize this meeting. And I also want to thank Grace, Nina, Eleanor, Hannah and Zach for a really very strong presentation that really helps articulate some of the issues. But the risky part is that generally speaking, as an adult, one tends to kind of patronize young people. That's nice, and move on. But I'm going to treat you like I would treat anybody in this room. You're professionals, you're here as professional speakers, and you're here making points. And I frankly disagree with some of your points. And one time I disagreed with a young person's point, and the mentor who was with her got all ballistic about it. But I trust that that's not going to be the case here. I'm very pleased to see the folks from Denmark just came in, and I'm sorry they didn't hear your presentation. But based on what I heard some of those folks say yesterday, I think had they spoken, they would have given a different perspective. And so I think it's also important as a measure of respect that just as no single African American represents every black person in America, just as no single woman represents every woman in the world, just as no single Muslim represents the entire Muslim population, the same is true with youth. Youth come in all shapes and sizes and all opinions. And I happen to think that if we were to ask other youth, and perhaps our friends from the Nordic region can weigh in, that we would get a different response over the issue of blocking and filtering. I speak to a lot of young people, and I don't claim to know everything that every young person says, but generally speaking, when I speak to young people, what I hear is that blocking hasn't really helped me learn more, it hasn't helped me enjoy the internet more, it hasn't helped me thrive as much as education, as much as building up a sense of resilience, as much as having a support system, as much as learning how to use the technology in ways that will last me a lifetime. And I say that not because I don't think that blocking has no role. I think it has a tremendous role with very young children who might accidentally stumble on things. But because, as I said in other workshops that I think you were here, the strongest filter is not the one that runs in your device, but the one that runs through your ears. So we need to teach young people how to handle the fact that on the internet, just as in real life, just as in the physical world, there will be things that are unpleasant, because the world is unpleasant. You guys are old enough to know that we just had a horrendous situation happen in the world where a journalist was beheaded by some extremists. Now, in no way, shape, or form do I want you or even me to watch that video. But I'm not going to shelter you from the fact that we live in a world where some horrible things happen. I'm not going to shelter you from that we live in a world where there is pornography, where there's even sexual abuse images. I'm not going to show them to you. I'm not going to encourage you to look at them. But we live in a world where one of the things that we have to do as we mature, and I actually still maturing, it doesn't end when you turn 18, but as we mature, we learn to cope with and deal with. So I would say that yes, blocking has a role, but I also think that we really need to think about other ways in which young people can deal with this. And when it comes to older kids, I really think that filters and blocking are often counterproductive, and they often get around them. But when it comes to very young children, I think you guys have some excellent points. So again, I want to thank you, and I want to thank you for appreciating the fact that as adult participations, happen to be young adult in this forum, that we can have a frank, open, and spirited discussion, sometimes disagreeing with each other.
And I think we have a response from Harriet. I completely understand everything you're saying, and we don't try to say that we're speaking from everyone. I think right at the beginning I said that we're just going to bring what we've experienced, things which we've had. I'm not trying to speak for people in different countries, for the Danes, or for everyone, but yeah, just what we've experienced. So you're just talking a lot about how blocking doesn't help a lot. And Zach was saying that with schools, we think that the filters are sometimes a bit overprotective with the game. So we did make that sort of point. But when Eleanor was talking about blocking among the companies, I'm not sure if it was made perfectly clear, but we of course knew what we meant because we've discussed this before. But she meant a lot of blocking individual people. So when she was promoting the report buttons, where if I didn't want Zach to talk to me anymore because he had sent me some abuse or something, then I'd like a prominent button so I could just stop him from contacting me ever again on that social media site. Might be quite good, actually. But yeah, and also with the parents, my point about the parents, it's the trust and the talking between them. So yes, we're not saying that we don't want anyone to know that this pornography or whatever exists, but having this two-way discussions, this mutual trust, it allows you to have the confidence to talk to your parents, for them to address these sometimes sensitive issues. So I understand everything you're saying, but I think what we say was a bit more broad than it perhaps came across.
I just want to thank you for that clarification, and I completely agree that the ability to block people who harass you online or annoy you online is very important. And I also agree that sometimes that's very difficult to understand how to do it. So thank you very much. That's excellent clarification.
And Zach wants to follow up, and then we'll go to Jess.
Yeah, just also, from my personal experience also, at home, my internet isn't filtered, and I have that trust with my parents, so they know I don't go on the internet and go and search specifically for things I shouldn't be going on. So I have that trust at home, but I find in school that it's really the filters are really necessary in school, because I know people who actually get their phones out and they'll text, go on social media in school, and I mean, that's just because they may sometimes be bored with their lessons or whatever, but that's really no excuse for going on social media. So in my particular IT classroom, everybody has a computer that has access to the internet, but if you leave people long enough, or if the lessons aren't as interactive enough and the teacher's just really speaking to you the whole time, there is areas in the classroom where the teacher can't see what's going on your screen. So I know personally, I see people playing games all the time on the internet, and they just find them through whatever. So I'm saying, if we had filters, if we didn't have filters on social media in school, I am nearly 100% sure that most students who wouldn't have their screen being seen by the teacher would be on that or be playing games. So I find filtering at home, I don't really agree with it, with the sites, because I feel as if now at this age I'm mature enough to really not need the filtering, and I know what I shouldn't be on and what I should be on. But in school, I think filtering is a necessary thing.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Janice. Excuse me just 1 second, Janice. I have a question or a point of order from the secretary.
Hi there, John LaPrise for the record. We're talking about perspectives on these issues, and looking around the room, the Secretariat would just like to have a quick show of hands, representation by continent. So, if you're from Africa, please raise your hands. Okay. Asia? Europe? Australia? South America? North America? Antarctica? Thank you.
Sorry, but you've missed one area. Middle East.
Okay, Middle East. Mina. Thank you.
All right, now, without further ado, we'll go to Janice.
Thank you. Janice Richardson. I coordinate the INSAFE network, but I also represent 30 ministers of education. Something that we've done in Europe is move from safer internet to better internet. This has given us the opportunity to bring together various directorate generals and look at how to use these tools in a positive way. And I've really missed this word positive so far this morning. Looking at positive content, we ran a competition this last year and actually got very few entries. Young people from all ages, age 3 through to age 20, are telling us that this is what's lacking, really positive, reliable, trustworthy content. We believe at European Schoolnet that you don't teach about being safe on tools. You take the tools into the classroom, you use them, you give good role models, and in this regards, we, for example, do an annual webinar or an annual 1-month-long course on games in schools, and we have had fabulous results from this. We also run a project called SMILE, Social Media in Learning and Education, for which we won runner-up in the European Diversity Awards for the most outstanding use of technology in the year. I think that it's really important that we look at these positive things. I was a teacher for the first decade of my career, and if young people are using their mobile phone, are doing other things, then the problem is that they are not learning in a way that's appealing, that's using their curiosity, because they should want to learn and use these tools, and young people do from my experience of them. Secondly, standard setting. Many teachers are scared to use these tools in the schools because it's a very ambiguous vocabulary. It's very difficult to get government-validated content, to know which are the government-validated agencies. And thanks to industry, we've set up a standard setting system for schools called the e-safety label, which really is bearing fruit, because also schools share information on the best way to handle incidents, for example, in the school. Lastly, InSafe is all about the holistic approach, being evidence-based, because how can we be awareness raisers, be educators, if we are not informed through young people in youth panels, youth groups, etc., but also through young people in trouble, young people who are contacting helplines, who are trying to get help. So this is the way that we try to inform ourselves to stay not ahead of the field, but at least up with the field. I'm very interested in the active choice in the UK, and maybe I've been reading the wrong reports, but it seems to me that only 8 or 9%, according to Ofcom, actually applied these filtering tools even when they went through this whole process of looking at the tools. So that's my take on it. That's what Safer Internet Day is about also, celebrating, looking at the really great things, these great technologies that are opening opportunities and that really are our future. Thank you.
So, John Carr, I believe you want to weigh in on active choice in the UK, and Susie wanted to talk about blocking as well.
Yeah.
John and then Susie, yes.
Okay. The Ofcom report that you're referring to predates the current policy. I'll explain what the current policy is in the UK as an example of good practice. Nobody would argue it's necessarily best practice, because we have to acknowledge this is an experiment. Nobody's done it like this before anywhere in the democratic world, and everybody acknowledges and accepts that filters are not a perfect solution for everybody in every situation. But bear in mind, I think something like 28% of kids under the age of 10 are now accessing the internet through a tablet in the UK, and that number is going up as the price of tablets is coming down. And there are very definitely, as we've all accepted, issues about the risks associated with particularly very young children being exposed to some completely horrible and potentially traumatizing content. And in that context, I don't think anybody would argue that filters don't have a useful role to play. And it's very hard, for an ISP or a mobile phone company to know in advance who exactly is going to be using a device. So we've taken the view in the UK that these filters should be made available by default, but of course they can be removed, and this is the way it works. And this has really only been in place since the 1st of January this year. From the 1st of January this year, the 4 major internet service providers, who between them cover about 95–96% of all the domestic broadband consumers in the United Kingdom, provide free, by default, a set of filtering tools. Now, nobody is obliged to use them. The only thing people are obliged to do is say whether they want to use them or not. So it's yes or no. And for all, that position is already in place for every new account holder. For the existing base of users, they will have been put in the same position by the end of this year. So by the 31st of December this year, every existing customer will also have been asked whether they want to make use of the filters which the company is making available free, as I say. So that's the position with ISPs providing broadband connectivity into people's homes. With mobile phone companies, it's different, and this has been in place since 2005, 2006. Since 2005, 2006, every time you open up a new mobile phone account, and that essentially means when you get a new SIM card, it's nothing to do with the device, it's to do with the SIM card, that's your account. By default, they assume you are a child, right? And that means all access to legal adult content, gambling, violence and stuff like that will be blocked. You can, if you want, and many people do, but equally many people don't, you can go through an age verification process with your mobile phone company and prove that you are over 18 and get the adult content filter lifted. So if you do want to gamble online, or if you do want to order booze online and stuff like that, it's very simple to do it, but you must go through that age verification process. What the mobile phone companies also do, and by the way, the ISPs do it as well, is that they use the IWF list to block access to child abuse images. That filter obviously cannot be lifted for anybody. The third and final point, I'm coming to an end now, Wi-Fi provision in public places. In that context, from about a month ago, I think, 3 or 4 weeks ago at any rate, all access to child abuse image websites is blocked for everybody. There's nothing you can do, you can't get that lifted. And access to adult pornographic sites is also blocked, and you can't get that lifted either. Now, a couple of the Wi-Fi companies also do exactly the same as what the mobiles do and block access to other types of adult content, but all of the Wi-Fi companies block access to porn and child porn in public places. If the Wi-Fi access, by the way, is being made available in a nightclub or a casino, only the IWF list will be applied because it's an adult environment, and so the issue doesn't arise. So that's what we do in the UK. I think it's an example of good practice, and we'll see in time how well it works.
Thank you, John. We have one comment from a remote participant, and then we'll go to Anne Collier.
Hello, yes. Carla, our co-chair, remotely would like to input as well now.
Yes, hello, good morning everyone. I hope that you can hear me. So as it has been said, so I'm Carla, I'm the focal point of the Child Online Protection Initiative at the International Telecommunication Union. Thank you again for this good workshop and this good exercise where we are trying to identify best practices on child online safety. Yeah.
Carla, excuse us, if you might just speak a little bit more slowly and maybe step a little bit away from the microphone. You're coming in very muffled.
Oh, okay, sorry. Is it better now?
This is better, yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. So, thank you again for, as I was saying, for this exercise on the best practice on child online protection. As it has been said by the other moderators and by AWS, ITU launched the Child Online Protection Initiative back in 2008, and it is a multi-stakeholder initiative which brings together partners from all sectors and from the global community with the aim to create an empowering online experience for children everywhere. Yeah.
Carla, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're coming across so muffled. Perhaps you could type in your comments and we could read them aloud here in the room. It's just very, very difficult to understand you.
Okay, great. I will.
Maybe in the meantime, I will help my colleague, Jarosław Ponder. I'm the Director for European Coordination as well as the Senior Advisor in the ITU. So what we wanted to convey is that the ITU is maintaining and the platform, which is multi-stakeholder with involvement of all partners. We thank you very much for recognition of the work done at the global level where each voice counts. So those who are still not involved in this initiative and those who are running their own initiatives, there's still place for everyone, but the most important is that those initiatives are getting interlinked in order to save resources and to provide the good results for all stakeholders. And the interest is there. We just concluded the World Development Telecommunication Conference in Dubai this year, where the child online protection was one of the top priorities for the next round of the implementation work to be carried out in different regions. And even some of the regions have put the child online protection as one of the top their priorities for the regional initiatives, like in CIS, in Europe. There is still tremendous request for the capacity building and for the cooperation between the different partners. So therefore, as I mentioned, there is still a lot of place for the cooperation and for improving this ongoing debate how to make this internet better or safer. Just in addition, what we wanted to also highlight is the a little bit slight change of the approach, going towards more accountable process, and this requires your engagement, where we can really make sure that this what we are doing is not only a talk shop, but that we have the accountable measurement, targets, and the dream which we want to fulfill, but we are agreeing on this dream by when it has to be fulfilled. And therefore, we invite you to take a look at the framework of the COP initiative of the ITU, which let me underline one more time, which is open and multi-stakeholder. It's not protected and it's not bounded from the entering, and this platform is for everyone to cooperate, but also to provide the services to the whole community. And to work with us on this new project. Of course, this derives and provides the better hope that the child online protection will become one of the significant component of the bigger frameworks on the cybersecurity, where also we are teaming up with several partners on building the global cybersecurity indexes, where this aspect should be seen as the one of the key. So therefore, please feel invited, and in case I missed some of the messages, Carla will type, and because she's our top expert in this field. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. And Anne, did you want to weigh in now?
Thank you so much, everybody, for your comments so far. I thought maybe I'd zoom out just a little bit and look at child protection in context. What we've learned from, I sort of have two key points to highlight that have emerged as we've followed the youth online risk and social media research in North America and the EU over the past decade or so. So it's a lot to sum up, but one is protection in context. The idea that we put child protection, and again, you know, we set child abuse imagery off to the side. That's a law enforcement and crime issue. We're talking about all the other stuff, and that's a lot, right? It's kind of all of human life. But child protection in the context of the three categories of rights under the UNCRC. Protection is one of three categories. The other two are provision and participation. And then in that protection framework, one of the things that emerged in a couple of national task forces that my co-director Larry and I served on was promoting the public health field's levels of prevention. Because, yes, Patrick, I think you referred to this the other day, not all youth are equally at risk online. And so just to briefly describe the levels of prevention, think of a triangle. The primary universal level is primary universal risk prevention education. It's prevention work with all youth, pre-K through 12, as we'd say in the United States, all the way up to university level. Secondary is specific and situational risk prevention education. Again, just prevention. And so that would fall into categories such as bullying prevention, sexual health. These established programs, evidence-based programs in risk prevention that we've had all along that need to have digital elements folded into them. The tertiary level, the very small little piece at the top, is prevention and intervention for vulnerable youth, for youth with established patterns of risk in their lives. At the primary universal level, true so-called internet safety education is literacy education. And we often refer to digital literacy. It's almost a default. It's reflexive. It comes up a lot, and it's very, very important, especially for cybersecurity and privacy. But it's just one of 3 literacies needed in today's very social digital media environment. The other 2 are the very well-established media literacy field, but now embracing social media that's produced and uploaded as much as it's consumed and downloaded. And the third one is equally important. It's like the 3-legged stool that will not stand without each leg: social literacy. Skills such as self-management, self-awareness, social awareness, and social decision-making skills and relationship skills. What we've found in the work in preparation for Lady Gaga's bullying prevention program at Harvard back in 2012, in doing the research work, exploratory work to develop a sort of base curriculum for the establishment of that foundation, we had a psychologist and a researcher from the US's Crimes Against Children Research Center, and an expert in social emotional learning. And what we found when we reviewed the literature is that really social emotional learning is the lion's share of bullying prevention. So if we could give all children everywhere these social skills, social literacy, we would go far in putting down, for lack of a better word, bullying online and offline. These are skills that will equip children and protect, safeguard them in all environments, including digital environments. And it's kind of a dream, the idea of bringing SEL into primary and secondary education. It's an academic standard in only one state in the United States, the state of Illinois, and it needs to grow. But it is in at least 25,000 elementary schools in the United States. So there are details on the 3 literacies in the report just released this past June of the National Aspen Task Force for Learning in the Internet to enable connected learning, the kind of learning that has been referred to before that brings robust digital tools into the school environment. And these literacies are necessary for advancing connected learning and giving children the skills to move into a highly digital, networked world.
Thank you, Anne. We have one comment over here, and then a remote participant, and then over here. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Agnes, and I'm a NetY ambassador from Hong Kong. So from what I heard just now, most of you focused on blocking and filtering. Like, there should be blocking tools. Parents should monitor their child maybe in a correct way. I think these kinds of protection are not diversifying enough. The thing is, child may not be harmed by only information they access on the internet, but by other internet users. From my experience, one of my photos has been put on a Facebook page without my permission, and people commented about my face, my body shape, and my personality. This really made me feel uncomfortable, but I can do nothing at all. People did not sexually abuse or bully a child with bad words, so like nothing can be done by laws or censorships. It seems that people neglected the negative impacts that other internet users can bring to the child. Blocking has its advantages, but not contacting with the virus does not mean that they're safe from the disease. Education is always fundamental, but it's a long-term issue, like child in this generation cannot be protected. So, may I ask, what do you all think about that can or should be done to protect the child from these kinds of passive hazards instead of just education and law enforcement, which are not effective enough? Thank you.
Someone want to respond to Agnes? Oh, we have lots of people. How about, let's start with the youth first. Youth, the responding to youth, and then we'll go to Larry, and Michael Kaiser wanted to weigh in.
So to answer that, I think one of the ways that we can deal with that, and from my experience, is positive peer pressure. Because in my experience, I've had a friend who was being bullied online, especially by anonymous sites. And one of the ways we can do is to show the person bullying, by that cyberbullying, that it's wrong. You stand up for that person even if you don't know them, because it is something that's wrong. And that positive peer pressure can get everybody to work together to get rid of that cyberbullying. So that's something in my experience that works when law enforcement can't do anything.
Also, with things like that, it's kind of a tough issue to tackle. But I've heard someone else, Sonia from Facebook, I think, she mentioned something before about what they're doing now. If someone posts a photo of you and you don't quite like what they've posted, they say she encourages, and Facebook itself encourages peer-to-peer conversations. So I've had the same thing happen to me. The way that it was tackled is, I first of all went and I saw the photo and I didn't quite like it. So I found out what I could do. Since I was tagged in the photo, I had actually, there's an option, I actually went through it, and there was an option that said that you can report this photo, or you can talk to the person about it and they'll bring you in contact, and you can kind of write somewhat of like a formal complaint. So I went through that message, and I went through that method, and I went and contacted the person and I said, hey, I don't really quite like this photo that you put up of me. Please, if you could do me a favor, could you take it down, please? So I went through that method. I mean, that worked for me, and they did take it down. But also, you can report it, and obviously, that's not the main priority they have with all the other things that are going on. But that's one method I could find. And also, Eleanor was talking earlier about like blocking people. So, I mean, if there was people that were commenting and you didn't really like what they were saying, or they were writing somewhat kind of abusive messages that you didn't really like, maybe blocking them from the social media so they wouldn't even be able to contact you, even though they wouldn't be able to, even you wouldn't be able to read the messages they were putting, so it wouldn't really be as harmful.
Thank you, Zach. Larry or Michael, did you have anything to add here? We have a couple of other comments as well.
Everything I was going to say was just said in very articulate ways.
Excellent. Yeah. Let's go here. She's been waiting a bit.
I actually agree with Anne about social emotional development. I think that for our age, blocking is counterproductive. For illegal content, obviously, that's a different matter, but for inappropriate content, at our age, we need the kind of freedom and responsibility to be able to learn how to deal with that. Otherwise, we'll never learn any social emotional skills, and if they have awareness about it, then we can actually learn to deal with it. And especially education in a school environment is where we can kind of learn through that. And I think a lot of blocking makes us think of the internet as a negative thing. If there's so much blocking, we think, oh, the internet is really negative. But I think focusing on positivity really makes us more aware, and we'd then be more likely to actually go to find positive content rather than negative content. I mean, personally, I think everyone else here doesn't really set out to find negative content, and if we do stumble across it, if we've got the freedom to actually make our own decisions, then we can develop the skills to deal with that. So blocking at our age for inappropriate content, I think, can be counterproductive. At younger ages, though, I do think coming across content that is inappropriate is a bit harder to deal with. So blocking at a younger age, I agree with, but at our age, for inappropriate content, I think it should be not as high priority.
Final thoughts here, Harriet, and then we're going to go over here, and then over here.
I think it's a bit like well, the internet is actually very similar to the real world. So if you have a small child, you wouldn't just let them go across town to the shop on the far side. First they go with their parents, and then they may be allowed to go the last few bits while the parent goes into a different shop. And maybe when they're a bit older, maybe 7 or 8, they'll be allowed to go all the way by themselves. So it's a little bit, it's kind of little by little you get more, which exposes people to the risks so they can learn, so they can experience this and they can learn these social things. So I think, as Nina was saying, it's not just nothing now and everything when you're young. I think that it has to be very transitionary. Is that a word? It has to, it has to be like that, and decrease as someone grows older.
Okay, is it Mandy?
Hi, so my name is Mandy, and I'm running a regional program across 5 countries in Eastern Europe and Middle East. And we've heard a lot about blocking and filtering today, but one of the biggest gaps that we found in the countries that we work in is lack of parental knowledge, and I know all of you will agree. So one of the lessons learned, or perhaps best practices that we've implemented, and we spoke a lot with the youth and worked a lot with youth, and that was to have youth themselves teach and train and work with parents. And we also found that in the countries where we work with, it's very hard to invite parents to come to trainings, and specifically fathers. So what the youth themselves encouraged was for us to include a bit more IT technical training, and that was a way to entice fathers and parents to come, and then we could move into the safer internet practices. So I really would like to, I felt that was missing in the best practices report, and maybe something we could add. And I also would like to make a note that specifically in Palestine, as we were working on safer internet empowerment and raising awareness, capacity building, a lot of child protection points came up. So we used this almost as a vehicle to talk about other child protection issues. And again, I think that's a gap that was missing, that this is not only about safer internet, but perhaps could be opened up and expanded to broader child protection issues such as sexual violence, family violence, etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. We had a comment from the Nordic section.
Hi, I'm John from Enaxo, or Safety Children Denmark. I think that we're talking a lot about the children and the parents, and sometimes the teachers also have an issue in dealing, for instance, with cyberbullying or conflict management and grooming and so on. But what we found out in Denmark was also that the moderators working on the social networking sites where children are a lot actually also should be educated. And when we did that in how to deal with cyberbullying and grooming and so on, the numbers really came down, and especially when we linked we linked their effort with 10% of their bonuses. It really, the numbers really came down. It's just a business model that really works.
Michael, and then we'll come right here.
Hi, I'm Michael Kaiser. I'm from the National Cybersecurity Alliance in the United States. Just a couple of thoughts about best practice here. And I mean, I use the word best in quotes because I think the concept of best practice is in and of itself something that should be looked at and defined because usually it's evidence-based and research-based, and so it's very important that we remember that. But I think a couple of things. One, first off, the multi-stakeholder process is actually a really important part of this process, that people come together and find places where they can agree, even if we might disagree about other things. And I think that's really important for the rest of the community. We're all experts, we're talking, we're arguing about things. Sometimes they're personal, sometimes they're evidence-based, but we need to work together much more closely, much more collaboratively to establish things. And that leads me to discuss a little bit something that we've done in the United States, which is, so at the National Cybersecurity Alliance, our mission is to create a culture of security, right? And when we looked at that, we felt that starts at a very young age. I think one of the young people pointed out here, just about crossing the street, right? I mean, that's a safety and security issue for every young child anywhere where there are cars, right? That kind of education can be taught by anyone. It doesn't require a lot of technological expertise. We shouldn't get wrapped around the axle because it's too technical and people can't teach it. In our society in the United States, when we want people to be safe and secure, we have very simple, very harmonized messaging that anybody can teach to anybody else in the community to make them safer and more secure. We did a multi-stakeholder process with 25 companies and 7 federal agencies that led to, based on research, that led to the creation of a very simple cultural message of stop, think, connect. Take security precautions, think about the consequences of your actions online, connect and enjoy the internet. This is a kind of message that could be taught by anyone to anyone, right? Very simple, and can be taught from the youngest age and right on through to older folks as well. So, and that's a very classic model in the United States, so whether it's stop, think, connect itself is a best practice, the notion of a harmonized message, the notion of a collective cultural message to everyone is pretty tried and true in the United States. We have, friends don't let friends drive drunk. We have stop, drop, and roll in fires. We have stop, look, and listen at railroad crossings. We have stop, look both ways before crossing the street. These are elemental cultural messaging to help people be safer and more secure. I think it speaks a little bit to Larry's filter between the ears, teaches critical thinking, helps people think about the consequences of like placing a picture online that someone might be offended by later on. And so we think you have to start there. That's where it starts really at that elemental cultural agreement about what people should do. I'm happy to talk to anybody more about it later if they're interested.
Thank you, Michael. Right here, and then we have our remote participants, so we have to get to, and then we'll go over here.
Hi, my name is Grace Kelly and I'm a youth ambassador here with InSafe. And this year InSafe ran a project called the Youth Manifesto. So it called on the youth from across the world. So we have opinions from absolutely everywhere to give their ideas on what was needed to develop a better internet. And when all the suggestions were in, we did a vote to get the final 30 points. And 14 out of those 30 were related to awareness, education, respect, responsibility, and freedom. So as youths, we're not asking for the internet to be blocked. We don't want to be sheltered from the world. We want to experience both the good and the bad because someday we have to experience it without our parents standing beside us. So if parents are blocking everything that could be challenging to their children, then they're of course developing their skills on how to deal with things, but their children are left oblivious and they're not developing the things that they'll need to cope with the internet when they're older. So we're calling on education. And over the week I've been speaking with Anne quite a bit in relation to emotional literacy. So in an internet where we all seem to be the danger to each other more than the technology seems to be a danger to us, then it's us that we should be looking at. I don't think there's anything wrong with the technology. Various content will always be there. I know illegal content is a separate issue because it's illegal on or offline. That doesn't change. But I think we should spend our time learning how to use and deal with all of this and how to work with each other instead of trying to change and block everything that we have that can be amazing for us. That's it.
Thank you, Grace. Now to the remote participant, please.
Thank you. We have a remote participant named Ioi Selassie. She did want to speak via audio, but given that it's been a bit muffled, I'll read out the question that she has written down. So Ioi said that, my concern is that we've barely scratched the surface on the need for corporate responsibility regarding safety online. The incredible engineering power behind corporations that have monetized the internet is an incredible partner to addressing this challenge. I work at Salesforce.com, and my friends are at Google, Twitter, Facebook, and so forth. I believe, and many of the parents and children we work with in North America believe, that a more powerful solution rests around the power of recommendations. We need a mandated partnership and collaboration between the businesses that generate and host the content that attracts young people. In short, if they can figure out how to serve and add to a users based on the highest bidder, they can also ensure they are recommending healthy resources and information when the audience is youth. I would like someone on the panel to powerfully address the need for companies to be more responsible with the recommendations for young people.
I will say something, but we'll have Susie go first.
I think this is a really good question, and I think it's something that we have got around very well in the UK. We have a group called UKIS, the UK Council for Child Internet Safety, and that brings together not just 3 government ministers, the police, ourselves, IWF, key NGOs and key industry representatives as well. And we all work together on child online protection. We've also seen a huge amount of activity from the industry in the UK. Not only are the 4 ISPs doing the default filtering, they've also put in £25 million, which is unprecedented, into a campaign called Internet Matters. And you'll find that every single big internet company working in the UK is putting money into child safety. I can tell you from the IWF's point of view, we're funded by the internet industry. So not only are we funded, 80% of our money comes from the internet industry, and all the big players, including, Jacqueline sat here from Microsoft. Microsoft not only fund our work, but they currently also help us by giving us access to free technology. We're currently funding a research project, and that's the same for many of our organizations. We're doing a pilot project with Bing and Google on blocking pathways to torrent sites, and they're continually funding this work. So I have to say, and certainly I'm not saying it's the same across the world, but I have to say it's not fair to say the industry doesn't do its bit. It's really doing an awful lot. I'm not saying it couldn't do more, but really I think they have stepped up and really taken action. Thank you.
Thank you, Susie. I'll start with one of my basic points and philosophies on life, which is the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement. Everyone can always do more, and I'll be the first to say that about industry or anyone else, but I would like to tell you what Microsoft does in this space. I've left some cards here on the table. That doesn't certainly help the remote participant, but our focus in the online safety space is very much three-pronged. First, we're a technology company, so we focus on technology. We provide what we call parental controls, what we call family safety settings, and they are available in all of our consumer flagship products. And I will tell you from our own research and from our own learnings, the reasons that parents don't turn them on primarily is what Zach encounters. It's because their parents trust their children, and we try to encourage them to, yes, trust, but verify. So you can have this monitor-first approach with our technology and find out what kids are doing online, and then you can set parameters and boundaries and so forth. The other aspect of our work comes in the form of partnerships. As Susie mentioned, we're currently running a research project right now. We have some other pilot and technology projects underway with IWF. We work with Connect Safely in the US. We help to sponsor them. They are the US hub for Safer Internet Day. And we work with a number of other organizations around the table as well and around the globe. We feel that no one entity or organization can tackle these issues on its own, so it's best that we band together. It's best that we pool our resources. It's best that we come together and collaborate. And then finally, we spend an awful lot of money and time and energy and effort on creating educational resources and public awareness raising materials. I am the current board chair of the National Cybersecurity Alliance, where Michael Kaiser is representing today, and we are part of Stop, Think, Connect and have been from the very beginning. But we also create our own materials, whether they be tip sheets or PowerPoint presentations or fact sheets or other brochures and other things. We have a website, microsoft.com/safety. There's a wealth of materials there. You'll be inundated if you happen to look at it. You'll say, where do I even begin? But we try to do everything that we can, but as I said, biggest room in the world is the room for improvement. We can always all do more with more resources and more collaboration and working together. So we have another, right here, please. I remember you from previous IGFs, but I don't remember your name.
I'm sorry. Okay, it's Bianca from Dockets Foundation. So I just thought, since everyone mentioned about the age gap, you know, going from a toddler, you probably want protection, and then going to a teenager, you probably need to be, you know, more on a guidance role. We are actually quite glad that we work on a children-friendly internet guideline. Though we are applying for dockets, and we do not know if we would get it yet, but I think it's very important to set up a guideline with everyone here, and we sincerely call for your comments. We are working with few parties already. It kind of has that elemental cultural agreement, and I think it could be enforced on the internet. And I think first with dockets, or perhaps we would be a watchdog type of position to working on the docket's specific domain name, but eventually, you know, extend to the entire internet to kind of put age categorization to different websites. We also have a baseline policy that address specifically on illegal content, which we would potentially take down. But the other thing I think it's important is that the best practice. So it goes back to the recommendations that a lot of you suggested, for example, the remote participant on Salesforce, that the recommendations that what are a lot of these websites can do to suggest to you. So I think those would be very useful resources. So again, we would love to hear from your comments on the children-friendly internet guideline.
Any response for Bianca or?
I have a question, in fact. First of all, my name is Nuran. I am from Turkey. And I would like to thank to all the participants and panelists because I learned a lot on this issue. And yesterday and today I learned many things about also the IT companies and like Microsoft and Google. And I appreciate the efforts of these companies which they are developing filtering mechanisms for protecting our children online. However, I would like to learn whether these filtering mechanisms do differ in terms of the social and cultural aspects of the countries, since we all know that countries may differ in terms of social and cultural characteristics. So I would like to learn whether there is this kind of differences in terms of the filtering mechanisms. Thank you.
Does someone want to respond, or I can respond generally from our perspective? So from Microsoft, we offer a number of technical tools, features, and functionality in our products and services. And what we offer are the ability to monitor first, as I said in my previous comment. So we offer the ability to see what kind of time the child is spending online, what kind of websites they're visiting, what search terms they're entering, and so forth. When the parent gets the idea in this weekly activity report that is received as to what the child is doing, then the parent can set sort of the parameters and the guidelines as to what is appropriate. So before any blocking or filtering takes place, you can actually see what the child is doing. In terms of cultural or social boundaries, that's really to be set by the parent. What we try to do with our services is provide the information so that the parent can make the decision as to what should follow. And we hope, first and foremost, that what will follow is a conversation. Hopefully we start with a conversation, as was suggested by the UK youth here today, before the child can even get online, whatever the age. And then that dialogue is created, that dialogue is started, and that dialogue continues throughout. So whatever cultural or social or other guidelines you may have in your own family, we want that to be first and foremost to be acknowledged. And we want the parents to receive information so that they can make the appropriate decisions based on the child's age, based on the child's maturity level, and based on the family's own unique set of values. Because as we've discussed here today, what's going to work for one family is not going to work for another family. Even what's going to work for one child in a family might not even work for his or her own twin. So these are very much situations where we need to they're very unique, and we need to treat them uniquely and make sure that we're giving each child his or her own due. We had a comment here, and over here, I'm sorry, yes, and then Susie as well.
Thanks a lot. Nicolas Saylor from the Internet Society. I'm not an expert in children online, and that was incredibly insightful. When I came here, I was wondering, is that a security issue? Is that an education issue? Are the solutions technology? Are the solutions empowerment, positive peer pressure, education? And I think that it seems to me it's a mixture of that, and that's your point as well. There is no one solution or one approach, and I think that should be reflected as well in the outcome of that best practice forums. It's not only security, it's not only education, it's not only technology, it's a mix of that. And my question is, as we get too closely to the end of this session, what will be your recommendation for this best practice forum? Do you consider the work is done, or do you feel that there is margin for this group to continue beyond this IGF and to continue pulling in, good practices across different fields? Thank you.
And I would open that question to the group. We only have a few minutes left, and we have 2 more comments here. And I would like to know if there are any comments from some of the other, on the periphery here, not at the table. So we want to make sure that we're acknowledging some of the other areas as well. But I think from my own perspective, I think this has been a wonderful dialogue for the past 90 minutes. We've had a number of submissions made early on in the process, but in my own opinion, this is just the start of the effort here. This is by no means complete. We've uncovered some issues today that need further exploration. We've got some topics that are open to debate. We know that there's no one-size-fits-all solution to anything here. It's all based on cultural norms, social norms, different families' individual values. There's many things to consider. That's my view, but I certainly open it up to the group as well. The gentleman first, please, and then the lady, and then we have another comment in the back here.
Thank you very much, Boni from Indonesia. So actually we did several activities to handle and overcome the problem in the internet. So in terms of overcoming the adult and also not only child but also sometimes in adult. But in our case, we have several activities we can be considered as a best practice, because we also doing the regulatory approach, a technical approach, as you already mentioned, and then social, educational, and everything. But one thing that we also doing are making an ICT volunteers, which is coming from the youth itself and some from educational background, academic background. So what they are doing is preparing all the material, approaching framework, and also collaborating with the government institution. So representing the multi-stakeholders between the government sector and then with the society, CSO. So ICT volunteers now in Indonesia has been spreading all over the provinces, and we are also working together with the international organizations. So I'm very proud with the activities from INSAF with Safer Internet Day. We also want to collaborate. So we are also preparing some what we call like ICT healthy and secure internet ambassador from the kids. So they are promoting how to use internet safely by themselves. But we from the
also importantly, contextualize it within what youth in a particular country feel about these issues. And I mean, we work very closely with ECPAT International, and they have a youth participation program to really understand how young people feel about the negative, but also the positive aspects of internet safety around the world. So I would really kind of reinforce this point that we talk a lot about successes in more developed markets, but we really have to be careful not to sort of transpose that unnaturally onto other markets. Also in the work, I'll be brief, also in the work I'm doing, I do see, I would agree that industry has done a huge amount, but I don't think we're seeing it being transposed equally onto all the new markets. And I think there's a huge amount of work and room for improvement in that sense, to see policies that have been developed perhaps in particular markets being effectively transposed onto other markets around the world, because there's huge diversity. And there's a long way to go with that. And I would just echo quickly, as we're here and we're talking a lot about multi-stakeholderism, one of the things I have seen in several countries is huge success in developing multi-stakeholder approaches to this. And it can start with multi-stakeholder roundtables to just address the serious issues within the particular context. So those are some of the points that I think have been raised, but I think they're really, really key. Thanks.
Some time. Yes, I think we've got the Nordic youth want to weigh in again. Yes. Someone will have to come to a microphone,
okay.
Please.
Hi. My name is Rachel. I would like to. This has been a really.
It's not working. Maybe you want to come up to the front here and use one of these microphones.
If I speak very close. Oh, okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. Hi. My name is Rachel from a company called Groovy Future, and I'd like to say that the conversation today has been really interesting. And it's good to hear all of the different perspectives. One of the points I'd like to raise, though, is that whilst it's really useful to have tools in place that the parents may or may not choose to use with respect to understanding what their child is doing online, one of the issues that doesn't seem to have been addressed very well is the fact that teachers are often the people who are at the front line and have the opportunity to actually educate young people. And what we're talking about is is about well-being. How do we ensure the well-being of young people both online and offline? And one of the things in Europe and also in the US, we've been very focused on a harm reduction approach and paedophiles and bullies, and very freaked out about the negatives and putting measures in place, without understanding that we could proactively address those issues by enabling and empowering teachers and also maybe psychologists to come to schools to educate young people about how do you manage, how do you define positive behavior? How do you manage behavior, maladaptive, aggressive behaviors? How do you bring about conflict resolution? How do you handle a situation where somebody's been bullied and they're shamed then by their peers? That's the sort of information that people need, and teachers are also a conduit that could pass that on to parents. So I thought I'd raise that question and reflect a little bit some of the points that Anne raised about social and emotional learning. Thank you.
Thank you. We really are just about out of time. We're actually a little bit over time, and we did want to set aside a couple of minutes to talk about the process that's been conducted to date. So if anyone had any feedback, particularly about the process, John Laprise, our consulting scholar, he is going to be giving in a documentation to the IGF as well about potentially improving the process moving forward, should this be replicated in the future. So any additional comments there? At the back, if you'd like to come to the front or use one of these microphones, it might be a little bit quicker.
Thank you very much. My name is Jonathan Sembajwe from Uganda, Rights of Young Foundation. I'm having a very little comment. When we are talking about bringing on board parents and teachers in providing a safe online environment for children, let us also consider so much the internet cafe operators. For example, in Africa, many children access internet from internet cafes, and something may be refused to be accessed by a child at school or at home, and that child goes to internet cafe and is able to access that. And remember, most of the cafes are profit making, so they cannot refuse a child who is going to pay money to access whatever he or she wants. So should also think about a lot of bringing internet cafe operators on board. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jonathan. And John Carr?
Yeah, I think the process has been just about the most appalling one I've ever encountered in my many years in this space. Not only is the timing that you mentioned, Jacqueline, regrettable, bringing it out, was it July, I think the first email appeared in telling us that this process was beginning. Now, I appreciate not all parts of the world go on holiday in July or August, but big parts of it do. So that's one point. Second point, the length of time. So July to today is what, 7 weeks, 8 weeks? I mean, I apologize for being so old and for having been around in this space for getting on for 20 years, but the notion that you can compress 20 years of learning into a 7-week period over July and August is close to insulting. And thirdly and finally, it's very much duplicating things that other people have been doing for a long time. The ITU and UNICEF, with Microsoft's involvement, with Google's involvement and Facebook's involvement, with many other companies and organizations' involvement, have been working on more or less exactly the same thing for about 2 years, I think it is. And the booklet's coming out tomorrow. Yet in this process, there was no indication that the people who decided to do this were even aware of that fact. We were simply asked to write in and pass on some ideas. So I don't know what the future of the process is, but I certainly think the past is nothing to be proud or pleased about.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the comment before. For the process, as the ITU, we will be happy to bring further the results of these discussions to the other gremias and forums. This was very enlightening discussion, and we are very happy that some issues like cyberbullying, for example, was underlined during this session, which requires much more attention at the global level. Some work is going on at the regional level in Europe. Another point is the industry. During this talk, this is my last message, I'm concluding. For us, the child online protection is the responsibility of all of us sitting here in the room. Therefore, the statements that some stakeholders will be more responsible or the other, it's maybe not the way forward. Everybody should feel in charge, and the good thing is that everybody is coming responsive to the calls, and we are very thankful for the very strong engagement of different partners, GSMA, Microsoft, IWFF, as well as the other partners like UNESCO, who teamed up with us to organize the open forum tomorrow at 9 o'clock. And therefore, please be reassured that we will be bringing forward this debate, and those stakeholders who are willing to more engage on the real work with the real outcome and hopefully impact on the decision makers at different.
I think the goal of this forum is to raise awareness and pull different people together who work on different initiatives. If that brings more people to the ITU initiative, that's great. If that brings more people to other initiatives, that's great. And I really think the goal is not, it's not to negotiate something that we all have to agree on. It's to really pull together what's happening in different regions and with different stakeholders. So if that achieves that, and if that can continue for that, if there is a value for that, I think that's useful, and that should not duplicate efforts, for sure.
I think that was a great way to sum it up. That's exactly what's expected. So if there are no further thoughts, we're actually a little bit over time. I thank everyone for participating this morning and for your comments and your ongoing work going forward. Thank you very much.
Just one addendum. I'm John Laprise. I'm the consulting scholar responsible for the document and supporting the lead efforts. I can take questions afterwards, but I do want to invite everyone to please participate. There is a document that's online that you can contribute to. The contributions will be available, or it will be available for comment through at least the 6th, and it is my understanding that they are looking at extending it to the 15th. Now, I also want to emphasize that the document that will be produced out of this process is is more of a waypoint as opposed to a final document. Finally, I want to encourage everyone who didn't speak today to please contribute. Your voices are important. If you're hearing us online or you're reading this transcript at a later date, we also want you to contribute. More people to the table brings richness to this effort. Thank you.
And anybody who didn't speak today and everybody who did, please come back here at 2:30 for a wonderful, highly interactive, no panel session on digital citizenship and youth.